Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so let's hop right in. I want to start off with a story today. Based on our topic today is all about power. And I remember when I was an administrative assistant and I was constantly trying to figure out how to have influence, how to get people to follow my lead. Not that I was trying to control anyone or trying to make anyone do anything that they didn't want to do, but I definitely knew that in order to show my leadership, I had to get other people to follow me. And that's when I started to think about this concept of power. Also, just for transparency, I also worked in the DEI space and I led two ERGs or employee resource groups. And I was always trying to figure out this kind of like love hate relationship that us as a society has with power. And so I thought about like, okay, when we talk about teams, there's so many things that are happening that get in the way of us being able to use our voices, being able to be heard. And it all comes back down to how the system views and holds power. And so today I wanted to talk about this concept of power and how we can start to work with it versus trying to work against it or working and saying, like, I don't want to be bothered by it, but really like almost embracing power in a sense so that we can get what we need done. So that is what I want to talk about today. But first, my name is Tashina, and I am an executive leadership and team coach, and I help teams navigate conflict, improve their collaboration, and get shit done without all the drama. I am a self professed team healer. I really like to see teams heal from their trauma, hear from the old ways of working, and just be better overall collectively versus the individual silos and things like that. So today is day 7 of my systems that help team series. And now I'm moving to another thing. Before it was all about seeing the systems. Now we are centering the voices in the system and really getting to understand like how do we center voices? And so what other way than to start with this concept of power and really sharing like how does power show up in our teams? How do we work with it? How do we navigate through it? And this could look like, when we think about power, if we bring it down more tangibly, this could look like speaking up. Like, how many times have you heard the concept of speaking up? There's a lot of power behind that, and and understanding how to navigate the power. There's also psychological safety. If I feel that I don't have some level of power, my psychological safety may be kind of like my psychological safety may not be as good as it's supposed to be. And so that's another way. Or when me as a coach or you as a leader say, I want to hear all voices in the room, what's the level of power that is sitting in that room that opens up for people to either share or to stay silent? And so we're going to look at all of that today in this live, because I want to help you see who holds power, whose voice gets silenced or dismissed, and even whose voices get amplified. Okay. So, again, this is day 7 of systems that make teams work, and we're focused on who really holds the power on your team. So, we can't move further in this conversation until we define what power is. So, power is always going to be relational, it's always going to be relational. So, this could be, sorry, y'all, because it looked like my LinkedIn is not working. But anyway, I'm going to keep going because I'm on live on YouTube and on Instagram. So I'm going to keep going. So power is relational. So this can show up in our relationships. It shows up in how We communicate with one another. It shows up how we are with one another. There's always power between two people, power in intimate relationships, power in friendships, power in um, parent child relationships, power in work relationships, power in the relationship between you and a pet. Power, there's always power in relationships. I want you to know at the foundational level, power is relational. And power, according to some of the, hold on, let me try to restart. I'm just gonna remove it from LinkedIn because it's not working. Um, all right. So power, it shows up in three different ways. Power shows up either automatically. So I may have automatic power just for who I am, right? So that could be um because I'm a mom, I have a level of power. Because I am a female, I have a level of power. Some people are, you just have power automatically because of, you know, you just got it. You didn't have to work for it, you just got it. Then there's power through position. So I got a title, I got a promotion, something happened where someone labeled me by title, by position, by class, by, there's power in my position. And then there's power in just my identity. So I have an identity. Maybe I come from an identity of religion. We're seeing a lot of that in our society right now. There's an identity we have as parents, an identity as have Black or white or Latinx or LGBTQ plus or female, male, trans. There's identity powers, always dependent on context and always dependent on the relationship. And so you're always going to find that in different spaces. So the first thing is noticing how these ways of power will help you to start to see how it's working in your system. So once you notice that, oh, they have automatic power, they have a positional power, or their identity has some type of level of power, then you can start to notice how it's operating in your system. And then you can see what behaviors are being shaped on how the system reinforces these things. So in certain systems, you do have an archetype of that person. And so I talked about that yesterday, where your organization does have an archetype. And so if your organization is a 40-year-old white male, that is the archetype of your organization, and certain behaviors will be reinforced. Just the reality, right? There's no good or bad here. I think, you just have to know what your organization is. Okay. So, what are the 4 points? What are the places, not 4 points, what are the places that you can look for so you can be able to see what type of power is operating or where to find the power? Yesterday, I talked about like there are different levers. Yesterday or Tuesday, I talked about there are different levers in the system that you can actually put up, tap on, okay, that you can poke at. When we talk about the different levers in the system, there's different power levers in a system too, right? They're kind of interchangeable, they're one and the same. And so, where can I look at to see where the power is in the system? Sorry, y'all, with this going off on LinkedIn, now I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm confused because the technology isn't working right. So bear with me. I have my notes on my iPad. So we're gonna keep it moving. So where are the places to look for power? So the first place is to look at your org chart. So when you look at your org chart, you're asking yourself, where do people fall? Is it the CEO level at the top? Is it the person on the bottom? Does this person have a dotted line, or does it have a straight line or a solid line? We're looking at an org chart. Your org chart is data that can tell you a lot of things, because we know that power typically goes from top to bottom. That's the flow of power, typically. I'm not disregarding any grassroots movements or when there's strength in numbers, and those numbers don't necessarily sit at the top of the org chart. But for the most part, the way we look at power is from the top to the bottom. So look at your org chart. The second thing is you can look at your decision making. Who's making the decisions on your team? Now, with decisions, you're also looking at who's accountable. Because if someone is accountable or responsible for a specific decision, typically you are going to follow their lead. You're going to do what they say and you're going to follow that process. And so you're looking at who makes the decisions. I remember when I was an administrative assistant, there were a lot of decisions that I owned. And so, again, this comes down to context. It also comes down to relationships, that there are certain power plays that I can play because of my access to my leader, who's everybody else's leader, but I have a different level of access. Because access is also another way that you kind of look for power, and you're looking to see like who has the access, right? And, power, overall is about accessibility and about being able to say what you need to say, to make the choices you want to make, to kind of do what you want to do. That is what power is. And so if you look back to decision making and you're saying, who are the decision makers on the team? Typically, that's going to tell you something about that person, that team, that individual, that organization. The third thing is looking at where information is stored, by whom and how. So when we're looking at information, the reason why we're looking at this is because typically I can have a power play if I'm the one holding all the cards. Nobody else can see them. So that means people have to come to me to ask me questions. People have to come to me to find out about, they have to come to me to ask questions. I'm the only one with the answer. Or say I'm the only one with the drive, like a Google Drive or a Microsoft Drive or system where all the information is in my drive. So you have to get me to give you access, or you have to get me to give you the information that you need. Or I think about a team that I work with, who it was a finance team, and they were in charge of all the payroll, all the payouts to different organizations and to vendors and all that kind of stuff. And only specific people, you had to be in finance, had access to that system. And so there's power, there's information in that system that gives you some level of authority, some level of power. And so you want to look for where is information stored. This goes to also number 4, which is resources. Who distributes resources? Who acquires resources? And it's both the distribution of it and the acquisition of it, because I have power if I get to determine, back to decision making, if I get to determine where resources go, who gets them. And I also have some power because if I'm getting the thing, if I'm acquiring the resource, it makes my life easier. I can't help but use politics in this conversation when it comes to resources, because we are seeing a power move with resources. If you don't do X, you won't get this resource. Or I'm the one who holds the cards or holds the purse or holds whatever to be able to distribute resources to whomever I want to distribute them to. And so we see that all the time. And so we have to remind ourselves like there's some power there. Now, I didn't say this at the beginning, but I do want to just kind of pull over to the side of the road to share this. And that is, power is both negative, positive, and neutral. Power is both positive, negative, and neutral. So if I have power over you, that could be negative, because now I am holding things over your head. I am holding back resources. I am back to what I just said a minute ago. I'm telling you, if you don't do X, you won't get Y. That is power over you. Positively, I can have power with you. We're in this together. I am because you are. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple of days. I'm going to talk about, that collaborative environment, the environment where we all hold power, where we all are collectively locked in together. That's power with. And then power can also be neutral. It's there. I could either engage in it or I cannot engage in it. Or I could say, this is my little space and this is where I thrive. I'm not trying to be in your lane. You're not trying to be in my lane. And that's the way it goes, right? I see that a lot in the study of biomimicry. Adrienne Maree Brown in her emergent strategy book, it's like, I am here and I'm not trying to dim your light, nor am I trying to shine brighter than you. And the power is neutral and it's there and it's just something for me to notice, right? And so we get to choose how we deal with power. We get to choose what power means to us, right? And when we come back to this topic of like who holds the power, I want you to know who holds the power, but I also want you to know how is power being used, misused, or abused. How is power being used, misused, or abused? You have to notice that. You have to notice that. We cannot walk away from power. And that goes into like when people are talking about like, politics. I don't deal with politics. I don't deal with that. But you have to, because you can't change anything. You can't shift anything. You can't deal with anything that you don't make yourself aware of. So you have to notice, okay? So let me pull back on the road. I'm going to come back, keep driving on this freeway. And the fifth thing of places where you can look for power is in relationships. Who knows who? We are, what they say, 6 degrees of separation or 7 degrees of separation. I can't remember, but who knows who? There is some power, and I talked about this before in different areas. There's a lot of power in networking. If I know you and you know me and we know this other person, we can get resources. We can get information. We can get some decisions being made on our behalf because of our networking power, because of our relationship power. So relationships is another place to look for power. So let me repeat those 5 things. The org chart, look at your org chart. Look at who's making decisions. Look at how information is being stored or how information is transmitted or, moved across the organization. Look, number 4 is resources. Who has the resources? Who distributes, who acquires? And the 5th is the relationships. Who knows who? You always want to know who's who. I think too, like, sometimes we shy away from like connecting with people and we don't look deep, and sometimes like the people we connect with, they're friends with the other person, and that's how gossip and drama and all that stuff happens. I've seen this so many times in organizations where you think you could just talk to somebody, but that person is actually, they know somebody else. And so now you messed up because you didn't do your due diligence of noticing who holds the power in that relationship and who knows who. So I want you to always look at your relationships and know, like, there could be some power here and it's either going to be neutral, positive, or negative, but I need to notice. I need to know what's happening here. Okay. So, how do you work with power? As I said at the very beginning, power is always relational. Power is always relational. It's always about the relationship. Power is not between two things. It's not like my book and my iPad. There's no power there, but power is between two relationships, a relationship between two individuals, three individuals, groups, organizations, society, all of that, right? So we want to be clear on um how do you work with power? So you got to go back to the relationship, right? And once you go to the relationship, these are very specific things that I teach all the teams that I work with, all the clients that I work with. And I teach them, like, I really say, like, these are the ways that you need to deal with power. Okay. So I see a question. How do you deal with people who hold the power, but you feel like they are being slightly microaggressive? Okay, so I'm going to tell you that is exactly where I'm going. So I use a concept called a designed alliance. There is always the problem with us is that we don't come into relationships with setting expectations and being clear. Sometimes we just come into a relationship and be like, okay, bet you my co-worker, I'm gonna work with you. Or, we together and I like you, you like me, so we gonna do this thing. Like we don't come being very clear about what our expectations are. And a designed alliance is something that I start with every single team that I work with. And I'm like, okay, this is how we need to connect and this is what we need to do to establish how we're going to be with each other. Because I want to know if you're going to try to be microaggressive. I want to know if you're going to try to run some power over me. I want to know if you're going to abuse or misuse your power to get over on me or for the benefit of you and just make me out here looking like boo boo the fool. So I need to find out, I need to have the design alliance. Your design alliance are going to help you identify how you want to be with each other according to four things. There could be more, but these are the four standard things. The first thing is how are we going to communicate with each other? How are we going to communicate? Are we going to yell at each other? Are we going to be direct? Are we going to be passive? Are we going to do the silent treatment? Are we going to talk about you to somebody else? Will we talk right away? How are we going to communicate with each other? The second thing is how are we going to share information? Are you going to hide stuff from me and not tell me? Are we going to be clear? Are we going to use, like, if you're on a team, are we going to use Slack, Trello? Are we going to use Smart Sheets? Are we going to use email, text message? How are we going to share information? Okay. How are we going to share information? The third thing is what does success look like? What's a good relationship? What's a good way that we can actually meet our goals? Um, I know a lot of dating coaches, and I even have a concept of how to date the C suite. But I know a lot of dating coaches, and they talk a lot about like just being clear on what good looks like in your relationship if you're dating. But the same thing is for our work relationships. I don't know. We would never just jump into a partnership, an intimate partnership, and be like, okay, cool, bet this is how we're going to be. We're like, let me get to know you. Let me ask you some questions. We need to do that in the organization too. We need to do that. So what's good look like to you? If I communicate with you this way, how does that look? If these things are happening, how does that look? Like we just need to be clear. We need to not be afraid to call a thing a thing. And now designed alliances are typically used to help you when you come against conflict, but doing this beforehand, we putting everything on the table. There is nothing that is going to be confusing. There's nothing that we have to assume is going to be clear. And that leads to the fourth one, which is accountability. How are we going to hold each other accountable? Because we're talking about our design alliance now, and we're talking about how we're going to be with each other in this relationship. So if it doesn't happen, how should we hold each other accountable? This is how you work with power, because now you and the other person, one team or the other team, you and your boss, one organization to the next organization, to B to B to B to C. If you are an entrepreneur, like you're being clear about who, how we're working with power here. Because again, power is just relationships. Power is just relationships. And sometimes we abuse, we misuse, or sometimes we're confused about the conflict. But we and sometimes power can be neutral. It does not have to be something that you're scared of. I mean, because we see in our society we have people that are abusing power like crazy. But side note, didn't everybody tell y'all about Project 2025? I know everybody told y'all. So why you didn't listen? They were putting their power play right in front of your face. But because we didn't come and we didn't have that conversation about, okay, So this entity wants to abuse power. How am I going to hold them accountable? And one place we could have held them accountable is not giving our votes away. All right, I'm gonna come off the side of the road. I'm gonna get back on the freeway, right? Because I don't want to be, I don't want to go to the side. Okay. So in closing, I just want to tell you, like, power, we find out who holds the power on your team by working with it, by engaging with it, and by really just saying, if the word power is too much for you, don't use it. You don't have to say it, but you have to know, like, what advantages do people have? Because there is automatic advantage, there is identities that are marginalized, and then there's positional power, like, because you have a title, that people are going to just use it for their own good, and things will happen. And we're seeing that now. So the next time that you're working with your team, I want you to start noticing where the power is, who's making decisions, who's sharing the resources. I want you to look at where the information is, how the relationships are, and I think you'll be on your way. And I just want to say, if you are a team or a team leader or somebody who is looking for somebody to come in and help heal your team from all the trauma, from all the drama and the miscellaneous things, and you're like, I want to get on a better page, the end of the year is coming up. You are going to start thinking about 2026, and you cannot start your year being all frustrated and just being like, I can't do this. This team is crazy, or these leaders are crazy, or work is not getting done. If that is you, reach out to me via DM. Click the link in my bio. I have ways that you could talk to me. You could set up a consult call. We'll walk through your strategy. What does it look like? And then I want you to keep coming to me. This is for 30 days. I'm on day 7 of this series. And I'm talking all about systems. And I also did a bonus about systems versus strategy on my podcast that got published today. So continue to connect with me, share this if this was useful for you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.